Hello, Sixth Form. Mr. Flynn here. I'm going to be talking to you today about a very important matter, academic integrity. And I've subtitled this talk, Honesty and Transparency, and I hope you'll see why. So, what do I want to cover today? I'm going to be looking at what academic malpractice is. I'm going to be looking at the idea of what academic integrity is. I'm going to be touching upon the value of trust. I'm going to be looking at types of plagiarism, the importance of referencing, what is cheating versus collusion, exam malpractice, and some of the serious consequences that can follow from that. And I'm going to be concluding by wondering what a just and honest and fair education system should look like. So first of all, if I just move myself again here, this is an example of just how widespread academic malpractice and a lack of academic integrity is. This minister over here was in the German government. She was found to have copied another student's PhD thesis. And here you can see she is forced to resign. So even government ministers have been guilty of academic malpractice at times. Moving on. So academic integrity, what is it? Well, it's closely related to the idea of moral integrity, of doing things with a moral code and being consistent in the choices that you make. As you can see from this wheel, it's honesty, duty, humanity, transparency, collegiality, being good to your peers, fairness, and accuracy. And these are all values that are very important for us here at the college. And academic integrity is about your homework, it's about tests in class, as well as important assignments like NEAs and, of course, public examinations. So it encompasses a lot of different things. Moving on. Why is trust so important? All organizations depend on trust. For them to work effectively, for us to have strong relationships between students and teachers, we must trust each other. If there's no trust, and we've seen this in politics, there is no confidence in the system. And then there is a sense of real injustice that people have. So trust is all about promoting fairness and justice. And also another word that we're going to be using a lot today, transparency. Being open so that we know how the system works, and we know that the system is based on meritocracy, on fairness. It is trust that makes institutions efficient and work, so that we don't have to check up on everybody all of the time. Now moving on. I'm going to be talking about plagiarism. And the interesting thing about the word plagiarism is it comes from Latin. And it is actually related to the word for kidnapper. And I think there's going to be a very important reason why that we will see now. Plagiarism, as many of you know, is the taking of other people's ideas and of presenting them as your own. Now, there are different types of plagiarism, though. There's conscious plagiarism, where you take a book or you take an article off the internet and you cut-paste it and you put it into your work, and you don't credit it. But there's also unconscious plagiarism. And sometimes people do not intend to plagiarize. This is why it's so important to write down where you get your ideas from. That's good practice and part of academic integrity. And of course, the final form of plagiarism that I'm going to touch upon is self-plagiarism, where you've handed an assignment in on one course, and you hand it in again, duplicating it. As head of EPQ, I have to look very closely for self-plagiarism because it's considered a serious instance of academic malpractice. Now, in the slide, I've entitled it Borrowing versus Stealing. And I'm going to use the metaphor of a library. It's a wonderful thing to go to the library, to borrow a book, to have it stamped out, and to actually admit that you've taken someone else's work, you're borrowing it for a certain amount of time, and then you're going to return it. I think of plagiarism more like what this lady's doing. taking the book without asking, tearing off the cover, scratching out who the author is, and putting your own name on it. So plagiarism is a very serious form of academic malpractice, and one that is really important in my talk today. Moving on. This is why referencing is so important. And when you get to university, in the first few weeks of university, very often they will teach you once again academic referencing and the academic honesty policy. So we all know that if we borrow people's ideas, we need to put their names into our reference list and acknowledge that that is where we got our information from. Moving on. As I said, it's very much part of university culture that you get used to this. And when you're at university, plagiarism becomes a very serious offense of academic malpractice, and there can be serious consequences. You could get 0 for an assignment. You could also even be taken off a course or an entire degree program. And that's why this talk today is so important for a whole variety of reasons. In our own college, we've thought about this, and it's our aim to get you ready for life and ready for universities. Recently, the college has purchased software called Turnitin, and this is something that you're going to be taught about in a life lesson if you're in year 12, and in year 13 it may be that your subject teachers will introduce you to this software. It's pretty much standard now in every university that your assignments must be accompanied by a plagiarism report. And this is what Turnitin does. It searches the entire known internet for any mention of the words that you appear in your essay. Now, of course, if you've borrowed words and you've put them into speech marks and you've referenced them, then Turnitin will not count that as plagiarism or cheating. What it will do is it will find chunks of text that resemble text that is on the internet. So this is a very important step for you getting ready for university, and one that I think will be of great benefit to you in your academic writing. Now I'm going to move on to the subject of examinations, because here too, academic integrity is incredibly important. Now DESC, when you take an examination, guarantees the integrity of the examination system. We tell the examination board that we have followed all of their rules, hence that idea of trust that I mentioned earlier. Any instances that occur in the college of academic malpractice must be reported. We answer to a number of people, and I'm going to tell you more about them in a moment. So in conclusion, the whole examination system relies on honesty and transparency for it to work. Now, JCQ, as you can see here, the Joint Council for Qualifications, control all of the examination boards in the UK, and we report to them. And as they say here, failure by a centre to notify or investigate malpractice constitutes malpractice in itself. If we find students who have broken the rules, we must report it or face very strict consequences. And this is why invigilators in this college and many of the teachers treat tests and examinations so carefully, because our relationship with the examination boards and JCQ is extremely important. Now I'm going to move on to the idea of cheating, and I'm going to contrast that with the idea of collusion. I think cheating speaks for itself. I've chosen two pictures here, one in which a young man is clearly looking at somebody else's work, and one here in which a young lady has written all of the answers on her arms. Now, teachers look very closely for this kind of cheating, and it's very rare that we find teaching in cheating like this in desk. In fact, in my time, I can think of no time in public examinations where there has been serious and obvious cheating in this manner. Collusion, on the other hand, is when you share work with another. And even though you may think it's not cheating, it is serious academic malpractice, and it falls under the idea of academic dishonesty. And so this includes homework, essays, coursework, and NEAs. But also, it includes reporting what is on tests. And I'm going to be talking about how that disadvantages you if you tell other students what's been on a test. And of course, very importantly, collusion also is helping another student with an NEA, which is strictly forbidden. Now, there can be very serious consequences for academic malpractice if it's discovered. JCQ will start an official investigation, and the school will have to report everything that they know. This can actually result in the loss of the exam grades, and it can result in some cases with all of your examination grades being withheld. It also goes without saying that there would be significant damage to the school as an examination center because of that value of trust that I spoke about earlier. It's particularly the case in recent years during the pandemic that we've had to be very serious about academic honesty because teacher-assessed grades or tags have been so important. And of course, when we submit these, the examination boards trust us. They rely on us to be accurate and to follow all procedures, which is why things like cheating and collusion in this context become extremely serious offenses indeed. Now, what are the consequences for cheating and collusion? And in the case of collusion, many people feel that it isn't wrong. It's not the same as cheating in an exam. But of course, it produces a culture of dishonesty. There is a loss of trust that people have in the system. If you're doing a test first and you know that other classes have the answers and longer to study, you begin to lose faith in the system, and that can never be a good thing. It also, of course, negates the value of hard work. Students get better test results for less work, and for most of us, that seems intuitively unfair. Learning opportunities are lost. For the real terminal exams, grades are very, very important. But for things like mock exams and class tests, it's better to know what you really know. It's better for your learning so that you can identify the gaps and think of strategies to fill in those gaps in your knowledge. And perhaps worst of all, when tests and test answers and questions are shared, is that grades are inflated, as we see here. And if grades are inflated, then the grade that you receive is not worth as much as it would have been. So there's no justice in a system in which people get easy fixes and help from their friends. And it's the culture of this college that we strongly discourage any practices like that. I'm going to end by talking about a culture of respect, because this is what this is all about. And this is what the word integrity is about having a code of honor and morality. We need a culture of respect for other people's ideas. We've seen that with plagiarism. We cannot simply take them. We need a culture of honesty in which hard work is rewarded. And that takes us on to the idea of a work ethic. It cannot be the case that some students rely on the collusion of friends to do better without the hard work that many of you engage in. And I'm going to end by saying, if we're to be a just school and part of a just school in a just world, we all have to believe in the meritocracy of the system, that merit is rewarded and not collusion. So these are some very serious things that I've introduced today. I'd like to end, though, by saying that for most of us teachers here, we believe we are in an honest school. And this is just a screencast to remind us of the absolute importance of academic integrity and indeed of integrity in life. Thank you so much for listening.